Hello there, all my YouTube people. I am sorry about this, but I am coming to you from my local hotspot, and I realize that you guys don't always like the background noise, but hey, it is what it is. So, just try your best to ignore it. I have my mic set as best I can to try and filter all that stuff out. I got a comment on my years since asked for a divorce video asking me to list all of the reasons that my wife wanted a divorce. Now, before I go into the video, that's difficult. And anybody who's been through a divorce knows that is a difficult thing to say, because the person who's checked out of the relationship, and 80% of the time, statistically, that's the woman, but that aside, the person who's already checked out of the relationship has no reason whatsoever to tell you anything, unless it's going to court. If you guys are handling it amicably, I wouldn't expect to have any closure on anything. So, because the 80% rule kicks in. There's an 80% chance that, she's going to be able to move on okay, probably more than once. So, I have only been given two definitive reasons why this divorce is happening. The rest of the reasons that I give you are going to be speculation on my part. So you have to be careful when doing videos about this, because it's not really my intention to get into her business too much. But since she hasn't given me a way to really cope, this is my only choice. Okay, so what she has said, let's just get into it here. What she has said is and this is what she told me. What she has said is the primary reason that she is leaving me is because I talk too much. That's what she said. She said that there was one time where I asked her a question, and I spent the 45 minutes that we talked about it mostly being the one talking. I think that she was an excellent conversationalist, so, I don't really, think that is a... Hold on, just giving my brother a text here. I just don't really think that would really stand up well, in court. But that is the primary reason I've been given for her wanting this divorce. The secondary reason that has kind of come up is there just wasn't enough progress as a couple. But I think that has a lot to do with, again, the way men and women perceive things like relationships and progress a little bit differently. Men kind of want things to be consistent, okay? Women tend to view that consistency as stagnance, and a lack of progress. We just aren't always looking for the same thing in a relationship. I had a friend whose wife left him for a very similar reason, that she felt like things were just kind of standing still. But, there are periods in a relationship where you guys need to come up with a game plan for the future, save resources while utilizing those resources as little as possible. Make sure you guys are on the same page about where you want the future to go. I had a very difficult time having difficult conversations with my wife. She was very resistant to that. If things got to where they were stressing her out at all, on went her headphones and in her hands went her game controller. She just was not, and nor are the other women in her family, from my experience, big on getting to the end of an argument and coming to a resolution. And that can kind of spell disaster for a relationship. So the first two things that I gave you there are things that I have been told, okay, by her. So the next several things that I give you here are, excuse me, are going to be largely guesses on my part. So the next thing would be finances. We made all right money as a couple, but we both had our hobbies and interests, and a lot of our money would get spent on those hobbies and interests. Largely that felt like it was my problem, or was made my problem. But when I organized our stuff, I mean, there was like $10,000 worth of, Nightmare Before Christmas stuff and gardening stuff in our storage unit. Okay, I do have a lot of instruments. A lot of those instruments were purchased, were financed, and are now ruining my credit. But they weren't bought cash out of pocket. Every year we were together, and I have financial documents to prove this. We made enough money as a couple to cover our expenses and pay our rent. Okay. Again, it was there was no progress towards ever really discussing a financial plan. Housing. She got tired of living in the RV. Before we were even married, before we even were real serious about the relationship, the first night she came and hung out, I explained to her that I was not looking to live anywhere else for the foreseeable future. Now, 7-8 years down the line, I think that I would like to live in a little more brick and mortar style house. I've gotten a little tired of RV living, but back then that was the situation. I tried several times to get us into different housing. I got us with Divvy Homes, but they wanted documentation that she would not provide. I had us looking at those arch cabins, which are an extremely good deal. She even went and looked at land for that. She just quit doing that at some point. So I tried my best to accommodate, but I was also not in a situation where I wanted to spend six figures on a house. I think housing is one of those things that should be provided. I'm big on universal basic services, and the fact that we have to pay for housing in this country is almost appalling to me. I'm sorry if you don't agree with me there, but that's just the way I feel like it is. The next one's kind of sensitive. There is a 17-year age gap between us. She was just old enough to drink when we got together. I was already in my late 30s. So intimacy has kind of been an issue for us. There are several underlying reasons why that was a problem. I would have to get into her personal business a little too heavy to really effectively discuss this. I will be discussing one of my issues here in a moment. There are 2 or 3 underlying reasons why I grew out of being interested in being intimate with her. But suffice it to say, there were some issues on both sides there. One thing I don't feel real bad mentioning would be just her timing. I don't even have sex on my mind after I've spent, a 12-hour day driving around Texas, working on payphones and Wi-Fi. Okay, I I want to come home and have some dinner and conversation and probably go to sleep. And asking your guy if he wants to do it when he's starting to like curl up in bed is probably not, gonna get you anywhere, really. There is, as I mentioned in the previous video, there was a perceived lack of interest on my part in wanting to go to counseling. I explained how all that went in that video. Please go and watch it for a more detailed explanation. Just to sum up, I was not willing to go to counseling a mere year after we were married, but I did agree to go to counseling at some point. That was never set up. There is a certain amount of coping with being married. This is technically my second marriage. I had a very long-term common law partner when I was a bit younger, before I went to China. And there are certain things that you have to cope with in a marriage or extremely long-term relationship, and she seemed to have some issue coping with those things. She did not seem willing to spend a little less time with family and friends. I was often having to forego and even cancel many of the things with my family, or just leave those things open-ended and they never come up again, to kind of fulfill obligations with her family. She would prioritize going and spending time with her friends, rather than spending time with me. And I don't think that's the way you conduct yourself in a marriage. When you get married, you're going to spend less time with your family. You're going to spend less time with your friends, if any time with your friends compared to what you used to spend before. And really that's kind of just what it comes down to. There was just a like, hey, we don't, I don't like to do. The more you tend to do something, in my mind, the less special it becomes. I don't necessarily like to hang out with the same people every week on a consistent basis. Maybe for a few weeks, fine, and then we take a break for a while, or something like that. It just, they do an annual reunion. They do an annual family reunion, and it's like you leave the thing, and next thing you know, here it is again. I mean, that is a lot. Most families I know, if they do reunions at all, they do one every 3 to 5 years, not annually. Just they're a very close-knit family, and you either accept that or you get no time spent with you, I guess. Move on to the next one here. There are just a couple more. I'm having to go through these pretty quick. And this leads back to the intimacy thing. I have had issues with fatigue since I was in my mid-30s. I've been having issues with fatigue since I was about 35. Then when I hit 43, I really hit a major wall and could really feel a lot of changes in my body and psyche and stuff like that. Was not as interested in intimacy as frequently as I was. There could be situations where I would be into it a lot. She was not meeting those qualifications for me. But my fatigue issues were a big problem. I'm ready to crawl back in bed about half an hour after I've been up, after like 6 or 8 hours of sleep. Caffeine and energy drinks and stuff like that have very little effect on me. I'm drinking a Celsius and I could take a nap. I don't know if I have chronic fatigue syndrome or what. I haven't really been diagnosed, but it is an issue. And it did cause problems in our relationship, but I tended to kind of try and push through and go to occasions even if I didn't feel like it. And the last one on my list here is I yelled at her. I yelled at her pretty bad. As I might have explained some, we were going to move states. I had certain obligations to meet. Meeting those obligations kind of required her to meet the obligations that she agreed to. If she were to drop the ball on those, it would mean that my progress would be stilted. So in the long run, I had to come up with the funds by getting loans, pawning stuff, things like that. And by the time things reached a head, she had been ignoring me pretty heavily. Actually, she started ignoring me about 3 days after she got her new job in this other state. So, I had suspicions there. It's very odd when that happens. And, it got to where I was having to communicate with her family and some of her friends to be able to talk to her at all and find out what was going on. And some of those messages got crossed, and somebody spoke to her when I didn't wish that to happen, and then she got back a hold of me, and it blew up, and I kind of came down on her about, how she hadn't, paid for the things that she said she intended to pay for in the project. She wasn't communicating with me. I was feeling largely ignored. I completely lost it. I was pretty much yelling at her at the top of my lungs over my phone. I'm sure like our neighbors heard me and stuff. Was that uncalled for? Probably so, but by that point I was at the end of my wits. A 1 or 2 month project had turned into months by that point. I intended to join her in this new state in about August, and it was already nearing October. And when I say August, I mean the beginning of August, and we were already kind of pushing into October. The beginning of October, I was pretty frustrated with the whole thing. Now, I am not in any way trying to put all of the blame on her. I share some culpability in my marriage ending. I'm not trying to make it sound otherwise. But one thing I have always been willing to do is work things out. I have not been met with that same level of dedication, because I think that that's just what you do in a marriage. You guys have to come to being on the same page of the novel somehow. Anyway, I'd be happy to clear other things up in the comments. this video is getting almost too long to upload, so I have to go ahead and end it here. Thanks for watching to the end. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channel. I'm really trying to grow. And have a good day, guys. Thanks for watching. Goemonronin signing out.